What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today we're going to have our last of our 8 videos looking at the 2021 NFL offseason. And this video will focus on the 4 teams of the NFC West. So without further ado, we're going to jump it in. We're going to start by discussing the Arizona Cardinals. Now, they only had 2 picks in the top 3 rounds, and the first of which was used to select linebacker Zaven Collins at 16, and then they went wide receiver with Rondale Moore at 49. All in all, a pair of solid picks. I mean, they did just spend a top pick last year on a linebacker, but, I mean, you can't really have too many linebackers. And Rondale Moore is a solid receiver. He fell a little bit further than I was expecting, at least. I saw him as a potential early second rounder. He fell to the middle of the round. Pretty good pickup, especially seeing as their receiving core did need to get a little younger. Now, in the free agency, they made some moves. And they did add a new backup quarterback in Colt McCoy. And then they signed running back James Conner and wide receiver A.J. Green. Now, Green is an older receiver, but he has been dominant in the past. James Conner, he has had a lot of work on his, on his shoulders recently in Pittsburgh, but he's a very good, running back 1A/1B. Now, on the offensive line, they did trade for center Rodney Hudson. Solid pickup. He's a veteran. He can help them win today. Now, the big move for them this offseason was signing defensive end J.J. Watt, who was surprisingly released by the Texans, mutually released by the Texans. Very good pickup by them. He, again, helps them compete now. They also re-signed punter Andy Lee, and then they did sign kicker Matt Prater. So, Andy Lee's one of the better punters in the league. Prater's an okay kicker. Now, they did lose some players as well. They did lose running back Kenyon Drake and wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald. Now, Green is younger than Fitzgerald. He probably has a bit more left in the tank. And Connor versus Drake, I mean, it's kind of a 50-50 split. I would probably prefer to have... It's tough. I would probably prefer Connor, but I know I'm probably in the minority in that one. Now, they did also lose guard J.R. Sweezy. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they did lose linebacker Hassan Reddick, who was pretty good. He did get, I think, 12 and a half sacks last year in 2020. I could be wrong on that. He had a very productive year, at least in the pass rush department. Now, they did sign cornerback Malcolm Butler this offseason, but he surprisingly announced his retirement right before the 53-man rosters were set. So, a bit of a surprise there, but still. And then they did lose a couple other corners in Patrick Peterson and Jonathan Joseph. Joseph's an older player. Peterson has been with one of the faces of the franchise for years now. He will definitely be missed. And then kicker Zane Gonzalez left. I mean, they got Matt Prater for a reason. Gonzalez was streaky at times last year. Next, we have the Los Angeles Rams. And the Rams only had 2 picks in the top 3 rounds. The first of which they used to select wide receiver Tutu Atwell at 57. And then they went linebacker Ernest Jones at 103. Now, Atwell, he looks like a decent receiver. I would prefer Rondale Moore to him, but still, Tutu Atwell is your first pick in the draft. Not the best, but far from the worst. And then they did make some big move, a big trade this offseason, when they acquired quarterback Matthew Stafford from Detroit. Now, this was big. I love what Stafford did in Detroit. We'll have to see if he can carry it over to Los Angeles. Los Angeles is in win-now mode. You can definitely tell the acquisition of Stafford screams that. And the other 2 moves they made this offseason, signing veteran receiver Deshaun Jackson and veteran linebacker Leonard Floyd, also show that they're ready to win in 2021. So, this is a team that's older. They're ready to compete. They want to compete now. Adding Leonard Floyd, huge addition. Deshaun Jackson, if he can stay healthy, will be a huge addition. Now, to get Matthew Stafford, they did have to trade away Jared Goff, more likely for salary cap reasons than anything else. Jared Goff, I mean, it's safe to say he wasn't the best pick first overall. He did help them get to a Super Bowl, which they did lose, but still, the Jared Goff era is over in Los Angeles. They also lost some skill players in running back Malcolm Brown, wide receiver Josh Reynolds, and tight end Gerald Everett. Of those 3, Reynolds is probably going to be missed the most. Everett was a solid blocking tight end. Brown was a solid change of pace back, but whenever you gave him the lead back opportunity, he didn't really run with it. Reynolds, constantly an underrated player. So, now they also lost defensive end Derek Rivers. They traded away defensive tackle Michael Brockers. And they lost a pair of players in their secondary in cornerback Troy Hill and safety John Johnson, both of whom went to the Cleveland Browns. I mean, Brockers is probably going to be missed in the today, but due to his salary, it made sense to let him go. And John Johnson, Troy Hill will probably be missed the most, all said and done. Next, we have the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the 49ers were pretty busy this draft. They knew that they needed some help on offense, so they got it. With the 3rd overall pick, they would select quarterback Trey Lance. Trey Lance, solid player. I can't wait to see him play in the NFL. You know, he's not going to be the starter right away. They still have Jimmy Garoppolo for the time being, but still very excited to see him play. And then they stuck around on the offense with their next 2 picks. At the 48th pick, they would select guard Aaron Banks, and at 88, they would go running back Trey Sermon. And with their last pick in the first 3 rounds, at 102, they would go corner with Aubrey Thomas. Again, just some guys, good to have depth pieces. They did lose some running backs this offseason, so drafting Trey Sermon was kind of a must. He's a good player, though. Now, in free agency, they did add running back Wayne Gallman, and of course, they re-signed fullback Kyle Juszczyk. He's a very good player. He's probably the best fullback in the league right now, so can't go wrong with that if you can use a fullback in your system. They did re-sign offensive tackle Trent Williams. Great, you gave a lot to get him. Well worth it. Center Alex Mack joined the team, as did cornerback Jason Barrett, who re-signed, and safety Jaquinski Tart. So basically, a lot of players are staying here. San Francisco definitely looks like they have a solid future. They did lose some players as well, so they lost quarterback Nick Mullins, a pair of running backs in Tevin Coleman and Jerick McKinnon, wide receiver Kendrick Bourne, wide receiver Marquise Goodwin, and they had tight end Jordan Reed retire. Now, of those players, Jordan Reed was pretty much a non-factor. McKinnon couldn't really stay healthy. Coleman, similar. Mullins is Mullins. Goodwin wasn't even on the team last year. He was traded to the Eagles, and then the trade was reverted. So one of those weird moments in the league. And Bourne, not much of anything. They did also have center Weston Richburg retire. And then they had some defensive linemen leave, and defensive end Ezekiel Ansah and defensive tackle Solomon Thomas. Thomas, probably not worth the 3rd overall pick they spent on him, but still, he had some decent years there. Cornerback Richard Sherman also left the team. Not the Sherman that they were hoping to get, but he was still okay. Lastly, we have the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Seattle only had a single pick in the top 3 rounds, and that was the 56th pick, which they would use to select wide receiver Dwayne Eskridge. I probably prefer both Atwell and Moore to him because he's more raw, but he's still a solid player. Now, in free agency, they did make some moves, mostly re-signing some key players on offense. Quarterback Geno Smith isn't a key player. He's a good backup, though. Running back Chris Carson was the big name for them. They got him back for a relatively reasonable deal. Tight end Gerald Everett joined the team from a division rival. Always nice. They did trade for guard Gabe Jackson as well. So the offense is going to be very similar this year. Now, they also signed defensive end Carlos Dunlap and defensive end Alden Smith. And they also signed cornerback Pierre Desir. So, solid players that they got all said and done. Some of these guys aren't going to be what they were back in the day, like Dunlap, but they can still bring a lot to this team, a team that's in a win-now mood. Now, they did lose some players as well. They lost running back Carlos Hyde, and then tight end Greg Olsen did retire. He's not really going to be remembered as a Seahawk, though. That's just kind of obvious. He'll be remembered more as a Bear and a Panther than anything. And they also had guard Mike Upati retire, so a couple of bigger names did retire. Potential Hall of Famer Greg Olsen, maybe one day, like 30 years down the road. Linebacker Bruce Irvin left the team as well, as did KJ Wright and Shaquem Griffin. So they did lose some linebackers, Shaquem being more of a special teamer than the other two. And cornerback Shaquille Griffin also left the team, so the 2 Griffin brothers left. They will definitely be missed. Now, you'll notice I omitted saying wide receiver Josh Gordon. He is currently a free agent, but he is still suspended. He's got so much talent. I don't want to spend this video going in and talking about what could have been with him. We'll see what happens with Josh Gordon. Now, the 2020 standings saw Seattle win this division with a 12-4 record. Los Angeles finished 2 games behind them at 10-6. Arizona went 8-8, and San Francisco went 6-10. How do I have them doing this year? I have Los Angeles coming out on top in this division, Arizona jumping up to 2nd, Seattle going 3rd, and San Francisco going 4th. Now, part of why I have San Francisco at 4, I want to get that one out of the way first. I understand that last year they had a ton of injuries, but the real thing is, how much do you trust Jimmy Garoppolo as your quarterback? And even when Garoppolo inevitably gets benched for Trey Lance, Can Trey Lance lead a team like this? I don't know. I'd love to think so, but I don't know. Seattle, I have them at 3. I mean, the top 3 here in this division are a real coin flip. I love what Russell Wilson can do, but I still have questions about the offensive line, and I still have some questions about the defense. So, I mean, they didn't do enough, in my opinion, to address those concerns. Yes, adding Dunlap, adding Smith, adding Jackson, those players help those needs, but I don't think they're really in position to make a deep run this year. Although I do think you can make a case for all 4 of these teams to make a Super Bowl run this year, at minimum a playoff run. So it was like splitting hairs to figure out how I had these teams ranked. Now I have Arizona at 2. I think Kyler Murray is going to have a good year this year. I think he's going to have a breakout campaign. Maybe a little, not the 2019 Lamar Jackson breakout, but something similar to that with less rushing yards, a few more passing yards. They're definitely setting him up to succeed. The defense, though, it's going to be a little bit of a problem. There's going to be a lot of shootouts, but I think this offense can handle that. And I have the Rams winning this division. I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of what Matthew Stafford did in Detroit. And Detroit was just a garbage boat. So I'd love to see what he can do with Sean McVay's offense in Los Angeles, prime time, lights on, everyone's watching. But anyway, guys, like I said, these 4 teams, you could make a case for me that San Francisco will win this division. You could make a case that Seattle would win this division, and I would listen to you. I can see Seattle winning. I can see San Francisco winning. I can see Arizona winning. I can see Los Angeles winning. So if you're a 49ers fan, don't hate too much. I completely see where you guys are coming from. You're going to be getting a lot of players back from injury, and if your team could stay healthy, you're going to have a good year. But anyway, this was the NFC West offseason recap. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you guys enjoyed this series. Have a good rest of your day.